Hi, it's Mike with AskTractorMike.com. Final tractor sales figures are out for 2022, and we got a couple of segments of the market that are going this way, and one segment of the market that's going this way. We'll tell you why and what it means for 2023 as soon as we go into the computer. Let's get started. Well, here are the final tractor sales numbers for 2022, courtesy of the Association of Equipment Manufacturers, or the AEM. And we do appreciate them letting us use these numbers. Now, a little explanation before we start. These are U.S. figures only, and the AEM refers to a two-wheel drive farm tractor as a fixed frame tractor, in other words, a non-articulated tractor, and a four-wheel drive farm tractor is an articulated tractor. And so we're going to look at all these numbers today. First off, let's look at the little tractors under 40 horsepower. That market has been on fire the last couple of years in total growth, and this year it went backwards. We went from 215,286 units sold in 2021 to 173,671 in 2022, or a drop of 19.3%. And we'll talk about why that happened here in just a second. If you look at the 40 to 100 horsepower tractor market, and these tend to be owned by people that probably have a job in town and farm on weekends, probably have cattle or hay or something like that. Those numbers went from 75,400 in 2021 to 67,346 in 2022, or a drop of 10.7%. If you look at the market over 100 horsepower, the big farming tractors, that bucked the trend. They went from sales of 23,729 in 2021 to 26,422 in 2022, or a gain of 11.3%. And we'll talk about why that is here shortly. Finally, I want to mention in passing, the articulated four-wheel drive tractors actually dropped. They went from 3,529 units in 2021 to 3,469 in 2022, while self-propelled combines, the big combines they use to harvest grains, went up sharply from 6,278 units in 2021 to 7,267 in 2022, or a gain of 15.8%. So we actually went backwards in the number of sales of the smaller tractors, went up in bigger tractors, went down in articulated tractors, and combines we went up sharply. So what's going on? Well, let's break these numbers down. Well, let's analyze the market just a little bit and see why we're looking at numbers like we are. And what I've done on this graph is put how many sales under 40 horsepower were made in 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022. And then that versus the inventory. In other words, how many tractors are available to sell versus how many were sold. And you can see I've done this for every segment of the market. The 40 to 100 horse, I've done that. I've shown 2019, 20, 21, and 22, how many total units were sold and what percentage the inventory that is available is to that. I've done that with over 100 horse, four-wheel drive articulated, and combines. Before we go any further today, let's talk about one of the main events that impacted tractor sales, and that was COVID. And what I'm going to do today, I've got the numbers from 2019 to 2022 all together for a reason, and I'm going to go through on these middle numbers here, 2020 and 2021, and basically hide them so you can't see them. And then we can really compare apples to apples. The market that was before COVID and the market that is after COVID. Because when COVID hit, people quit going places. There was more cash. We had government payments. All of these things happened, and people bought different products with reckless abandon. So you really, in order to compare apples to apples, you've kind of got to throw the COVID years of sales out the window and just compare what happened in 2019 versus what happened in 2022. And when you do that, we've got a totally different outlook on the market. What I'm going to do here is take a look at every segment of the tractor market and break it down and look at what happened the year before COVID, which would have been 2019. I'm going to throw the COVID years 2020 and 2021 out and look at last year as we're coming away from COVID. Where did the market compare post-COVID versus pre-COVID? And in the under 40 horsepower market, the difference between 2019 and 2022 was we're still growing. We're up 6% from 2019 and 2022. So if you throw the COVID years out, the market is still growing. And of course, COVID meant more people moved to the country. They had more disposable income because they weren't traveling. And we had government payments, and they bought small tractors. And that was probably the market that was affected more by COVID than any other. But when you look at the 40 to 100 horsepower tractor market, if you compare post-COVID 2022 versus pre-COVID 2019, we still saw a 12% increase in the market. So even though the market this year is down from last year, it's still better than it was in 2019. So it's on an upward trend. When you look at over 100 horsepower, wow, that market is on fire. If you look at 2019 before COVID, and granted, this market was probably affected more by the war in the Ukraine, more than it was COVID. But if you look at 2019 versus 2022, we've got a 42% increase. That's a huge growth in the big tractor market, the tractors that are used to produce food. And when you go to the articulated market, the problem here is right here in inventory. You can look at going back to 2019, there were 758 units in inventory in 2019, and now we're down to 529, and the market has grown by 20%. So you got to think this market would be growing even more if there were tractors in the field to support it. And then when you look at combines, you'll see how the market there has grown. And of course, crop prices are good. We've got the situation in the Ukraine that may mean a shortage of food and crops. And so people are buying these. The market is up 51% in 2022 versus 2019. So we're seeing massive growth in that market and pretty decent inventory there to support it. So that kind of tells you where the numbers are. So what's the bottom line to all these numbers? Well, first off, if you're a small tractor buyer, the supply has caught up with demand a little bit. I'm going to put a graph up here that shows in 2019 how the gap between annual sales and supply was, and then in 2020 and 21 when COVID was raging, those numbers got way out of line. And then looking here at 2022, they've come back together a little bit. Now there's a lot more supply on the ground than there was, but I don't think we're to the point yet where dealers are motivated to have giveaway deals or manufacturers are motivated to have 0% for forever programs. But we're definitely better off than we were a year ago. If you're shopping for a small tractor this spring, your negotiation position is a lot better than it was a year ago. And I think hopefully this year when you go into the dealership, the salesman will be willing to get out of his chair to come wait on you because he has something on the lot he can sell you, or she. The mid-range tractor market is kind of a funny market. I'm a little bit concerned long-term that the market here is going to soften, and that's because of age. There's a lot of folks that have 40 to 100 horse tractors that derive a little bit of income off their tractors. They probably have jobs in town and a few head of livestock on the side, put up hay, do things like that. The problem is they're aging. They're my age or older. A lot of them are retiring. And I don't see another generation coming up behind them that wants to have a few cows and do all that work for income. So I'm not so sure that market is not going to soften over time and contract a little bit. I could be wrong. So where we're at right now in that market is the supplies have picked up a little bit, still not where they need to be, and demand is softened but is still pretty strong. And so that market is still in a little bit of flux after COVID. The big tractor market is where the problem is with inventory. Several things are going on there. First off, both Deere and CNH have had recent strikes that idled production, slowed the pipeline down on the bigger tractors. We have a situation in the Ukraine where a lot of that area, they're not producing crops. There's good crop prices. American farmers want to try to produce to make up the difference, and the supply of tractors is just flat not there. And so where we're at with those, I think we're going to have another year where the pipeline is still filling up. I think demand is going to stay strong. I've heard the used tractor market is on fire on that size tractor. I've heard that folks that have decent tractors that are fairly modern, say from the early 1990s or mid 1990s forward, that are for sale, are bringing more than they sold for new by anywhere from 10 to 30%. So if you've got a big tractor and you're wanting to get out of farming, boy, now's the time to sell. But farmers are buying up anything they can to get their crops in, and so that market is on fire, and the inventory situation is pretty bad. So that's where we stand with all our tractor sales. Things are getting back to normal, but slowly. Appreciate you watching my videos. If you're buying a small tractor, here's a couple of videos you might want to watch to help you pick out the right thing and get a good deal. And here's a link to my website and the Tractor Fund Store with unique items for sale for the tractor owner. It helps support my channel. Thanks for watching.